So the question is, do you agree that in general, if it's like Baltimore, I think the case could be made that Baltimore hasn't been downgraded at all.
I haven't downgraded them. I got them the same.
Okay, but they're 1 and 2, which is far below what was expected.
Let's see. So they were, but they played Dallas and they played Kansas City, so that's a win.
Yeah.
And then they blew the Raider game, which should have been like a 0.75. So they're down like 0.75 games versus expected.
Okay, and they closed what, about 10.2?
Exactly. So they should be 9.5.
And they're 9.8, 9.5 over minus 150.
So there's an example where they're saying we're not. In fact, that doesn't make sense. Right?
They've upgraded Baltimore,
which I think is insane.
Which is interesting. Possibly what could be going on. Well, but Pittsburgh and Cincinnati offset. The Bengals are way worse, and Pittsburgh's way better. So those offset each other.
But I would make
there's a 10.5 out there, minus 150 to the under.
That's a 10. It's a 10.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is that this is a combination of saying mathematically, how should the win total? You know what I might put out tomorrow is I'll tweet this at RJ in Vegas or I'll exit out there, I guess. I don't know. I'll say, okay, based on the fractional wins, how many wins should they have had and how many wins do they have? And then I'm going to adjust their season wins and then say, okay, here is what, if there was no upgrade or downgrade to the teams, where everyone's season wins would be at, and then show where the season wins are and say, well, this is pure adjustment of power rating.
Yes, and we have to be a little bit careful with teams like the Chargers with the quarterback injuries.
Except that that game was out of reach effectively before he got hurt. I mean, what game did they?
No, it's game 4. He's going to miss.
Oh,
Herbert.
okay.
So they went from a 50% chance to win.
Yeah. So you're saying not the past injuries as much, but
future, yes.
The existing injuries that will affect more than weeks to come in theory. Okay.
Yeah. So Philly, you could make the case, for instance. I mean, they'll be compromised for a game or two with their wide receiver injuries, but that's not long term.
All right. So let's do one more with the 49ers.
Oh, that's a great example. So the
that'd
Niners...
that'd be similar to the Ravens in theory, right? You've got a really good team.
Right. So the Niners were like 0.7 against the Jets. And this past week, they were...
Well, they were 0.7 as a 3.5 point favorite?
Yeah, you're right. Let's give them 0.65.
All right.
Yeah. So against the Rams, back before the season started, at the Rams, they're probably 0.6, right?
Okay, that's good, yeah.
What was their week 2 game, Mackenzie?
At Vikings, another 0.6.
Another 0.6. So they should have 2 wins. And they got 1. So we want to their pre-flop number, they got bet down to
was it 10.5?
It's like 11.
11 point. It was like 11.
Geez.
11. I think under 11.5, but the big vig. So called 11.1.
Okay.
So they lost a
It'd
win.
Be 10.1. You're saying? Right
yes, 10.1.
If there's no adjustment.
And I'm guessing that they anchored the Niners. I'm guessing it's under 10.5, lay $1.50.
10.5 flat.
So we gone under has got to be good. Because things couldn't have gone much worse injury-wise. Now, maybe you could say these guys are going to get healthier.
Now, that's interesting because to some degree, you got to say it's hard to downgrade them because they were injured when they lost these games, right? But I don't see how you upgrade them.
Especially with more injury news, like McCaffrey going to see a specialist in Germany.
That's not good news when he's flying 18 hours to see a specialist on his Achilles.
He's going to the Kobe Bryant.
Exactly.
He's getting the blood cells.
Yeah, I got him down a point. And remember, they're really injured to start the season. I got him down a point.
Well, they weren't as injured to start the season. There was questions about the contract holdouts, how they were going to play.
And they got, a better example is to say that their offense guys weren't going to be in game shape, but on defense, they had 2 of their defensive stars out, Greenlaw and what's the guy the Huff and Puff? Hufanga, yeah. Hufanga came back.
And news today, a guy that a lot of people on Twitter were complaining about him loafing. I don't know if this was related, but he is out for the season, their D tackle, Jonathan Hargreaves.
And how good is he?
He's good. He's like the 3rd most highest paid defensive player.
Well, I would say one of the things that I've heard about the 49ers is last year they had real depth at D-line, and this year they didn't. And now you're saying it was a D-lineman lost?
Yeah, D-tackle, yeah.
Yeah.
And let's look at this, tread on the tires, Super Bowl hangover, 3 really, really tough playoff losses, and it really looks like that this has the Niners, possibly that's going to have implications all year long with all that wear and tear.
It's funny because one, maybe it's because the Rams were injured in their own way, maybe as extensively, but I still remember the Steelers when they were going through. Well, I don't remember this, but I remember reading about it, though I vaguely remember it when they won Super Bowl 9, they won Super Bowl 10, and then Super Bowl 11. they actually were as good, if not better, but they lost Rocky Bleier, the running back, and Franco Harris, both right before the playoffs, and had no running backs. So they lost, I think, to the Raiders. So, but it was always like, oh, yeah, they had 2 running backs out. That was an excused loss. Well, the 49ers have their main receiver, or let's say their big money receiver now, coming into the game 3 was hardly effective at all, right? You lose your all-world running back, your tight end, your key tight end, and then your second receiver. So you got your first receiver ineffective, your second receiver out, and your running back's out, and your tight end's out. I mean, the point I'm making is this is like as much injury on offense as you've ever seen other than the quarterback.
And what's interesting, the Rams have the same issues. They got comparable. If you only count the O-line, they got more.
Well, but let's call it even,
sure.
Right? Because I would say that Kittle is who knows? No, wait. We're saying Kittle and McCaffrey versus the O-line?
Yeah, well, the Rams have 4 guys hurt on the O-line.
But no, didn't they have 2 come back for that game?
1 guy came back.
Okay.
And remember, the Rams lost their
both their wide receivers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they lost their 2 elite wide receivers also. So.
No, I agree. So let's call it about even. I think you're right. It's probably even. So, and wouldn't you say, if you look at maybe we start with the 49ers game because we're talking about it. Let's start with it. What was your thought of what the score should be? Now, remember, I have my projections here based on the actual stats.
Yeah, 49ers should have won 26-19.
Fez, I've never heard you actually do that. What are you doing to do these numbers?
I just glanced at the yards per play and the yardage, and I watched some of the games. So 26-19.
Well, the actual math says by 6.6 points they should have won.
7-6.
Yeah, so pretty good, Fez.